Hey guys, you know, I take long breaks from watching political videos now, and I've been watching stuff again, and I'm about a month behind on certain content creators. So I can talk about something old that happened like a month or two ago. Like, Shiri Thandar. Shiri? I always forget what his actual name is. Trying to impeach Trump, and it turns out that, well, he pretended that he had permission to do so from Democratic leadership. So a bunch of people signed on, and well, let's just say that a lot of people embarrassed themselves and withdrew their names from the actual attempt. But I don't really care that much, honestly. Something I actually want to personally talk about is the two games I've been playing in the meantime. As we've been listening to all my videos, I've been playing Sins of a Solar Empire 2, which I remember playing the original back in high school. In fact, I remember actually going to a robotics competition, because I was part of the robotics team. I was also in cross country and track. But one of the guys at the competition, one of guys from my school actually, was playing the original Sins of a Solar Empire. And I was also playing Distant Worlds 2 very recently as well. These games are relatively complicated. You have to, kind of focus up a little bit when you're playing games like this. Especially for Distant Worlds 2, because you can make it as automated or as manual as you want. Well, I guess I should talk about the stories of the two games. I really like science fiction universes. After all, I grew up playing StarCraft. And I waited so many years for StarCraft 2. And I wasn't really that disappointed. There were so many people who were disappointed with StarCraft 2, especially with Legacy of the Void and Heart of the Swarm. And I don't really get it. I think the ending was fine. I was hoping for an ending like that with Kerrigan eventually getting with Raynor. But I mean, it is what it is. I kind of wanted them to have kids because if you don't know in the background, Raynor actually has a child who was a psychic, and he was brought to the Ghost Academy, but he died in transit from a shuttle accident, and then his wife ended her own existence after that. But, like, one reason I really love these science fiction universes is just how interesting the alien species are. Now, if you don't know, let's talk about Sins of a Solar Empire. In Sins of a Solar Empire, there's only two species that actually exist in the universe. It's not really explained why this is, or at least there's only humans, and if there's any other species besides them inside of the TEC Empire, it's not really ever talked about. So, in the past, in the distant past of this universe, there was a ancient civilization light years and light years and light years away from humanity. And they were called the Vasari Empire. Now, they were slavers. They would conquer any other race they came across and basically force them to work for them. And then they would take over their colonies, make them like second class citizens, and, you know, just be generally mean individuals. And eventually, they got word that there was an enemy armada, perhaps some kind of uprising or another species that had gotten wind of their activities and tried to stop them. So, of course, being the arrogant bastards that they were, they sent in their entire fleet, everything they had, and they were unable to deal with the threat. In fact, they couldn't even figure out what the threat was. The only thing that they could figure out is that, well, one of the colony worlds, a very low populated civilization, or of Vasari on the outskirts of the empire, ended up finding the last ship from the fleet, or at least the last one they could find, and everyone on board had gone completely and utterly insane. They couldn't even explain what had happened. So the Vasari did the only thing that they could. This small colony world gathered up all its ships with all its technology and formed a fleet and fled. And ever since then, all their beacons, all their colonies that they leave behind slowly blink out behind them. And they just can't escape whatever is chasing them. And they flee for thousands upon thousands of years, eventually until they hit the TEC Empire, which is the human empire. Now, it was originally called like the Trade Federation or something generic like that, the Trade Coalition, I believe it was called. Now, the Trade Coalition is a very specific type of empire, and you can tell by the name, it is just an empire where everyone formed their own like little colonies and started to trade. In fact, there was not even that much for them to actually fight. There were occasional pirates here or there, but they didn't have any real problems going on. It was like a time of peace and prosperity and growth. And it is until they came across a desert world with a new colony on it. And this new colony had a group that they called degenerates. And what this colony was, it was a colony of people who were using some kind of hive mind. They all connected themselves via a computer, via some kind of psychic powers, meaning that they were all of one mind. And to these people, to the TEC, who believed in free individual will and really, I don't know, I would say it's kind of like hyper capitalism, but it would be slightly a misnomer to say that their sin was capitalism. But they were just kind of disgusted by this civilization, this group of people that gave up their individuality. So they ejected them from the planet. Now, it is hinted that they simply wanted the resources on the planet, or there was some kind of pseudo-fascist government involved in all this, but I doubt it. It just seems like they really didn't like the idea of giving up one's free will for a greater purpose. And I don't blame them, honestly. It is a terrifying thing, especially since this group of individuals would come back hundreds of years later. They would form many different colonies throughout the worlds and eventually come back with their technology and brainwash entire populations, using their ability to use psychic powers to completely subjugate whole planets, taking away every person's free will and subjugating them to the hive mind. And in the hive mind remembers. It remembers the sins of the past empires. And it is angry. In fact, you will have children being the captains of capital worlds, or capital planets. Not capital planets, capital ships. And they have all the experience of a grown adult because they got it from the hive mind. And other people have been driven completely insane by the rage flowing through the circuit. It is a very interesting concept. And part of the hive mind realized that it was being corrupted by revenge and anger. So it turned against the more brutal parts of this empire. Whereas the Tech Coalition, the Trade Coalition, eventually formed the Trade Emergency Coalition, something along those lines, called the TEC. And it wanted to defend itself from these aliens, these Vasari, and these human advent degenerates. But after about a decade or two, the TEC wanted to stay behind and protect themselves, to just fortify and protect what they had. Whereas their rebellion, on the other hand, wanted to strike out and destroy all the enemies of humanity, to wipe out the Vasari and the Advent in its entirety. The Primacy, on the other hand, which is the original TEC Empire, wanted to form alliances with those that they could and protect itself from the rest. And once they started getting warnings from the Vasari about what was following them, wow, let's just say that they thought maybe cooperation was a good idea. But then the Vasari themselves also split, with those who wanted to ally with the humans, both the Advent and the TEC, whereas the rebellion simply wanted to destroy all the planets that they came across, absorbing all the resources in the debris fields, and flee the system as fast as possible. But they simply aren't able to do so. The TEC Empire was so gigantic that the time it would take them to actually circumnavigate the area, it would be way too late. Way, way too late. Whatever was following them would catch up. And, well, Sins of the Solar Empire had several expansions, but one thing it never actually did is it never actually came out with a campaign. It never explained what alien species was chasing down all uh, these Vasari and destroying every civilization that they came across. As far as we know, it never formed any colonies. So if you never played the game, there's a few things that you need to know about it. For one, they don't use like warp travel, they use phase space, which is something very similar. In order to go through phase space, they have to use their abilities and cut a hole through reality, and that allows faster than light travel. However, there is something called phase jump. It's like these stabilizers or something along the lines. See, phase space only allows you to jump in certain locations to certain points in space. Now, traveling to a different solar system, it can be relatively difficult. You have to actually research the technology to do so. Not anybody can do it. But there is an ability to put inside of a gravity well a device that prevents people from entering phase space, locking them in place, and it can be used to keep enemies from fleeing while it doesn't affect your own ships. And no one understands how the technology works because there were ancient civilizations in this universe, in this galaxy. And this technology was found, and they never figured out how exactly to use it. At least not the humans. The Vasari may know. But after all, their civilization is birthed from only a single colony world. Their greatest minds weren't on that world, as far as we're aware. Now, they have used centuries upon centuries of genetic engineering to try to weed out any weakness and make sure that their strongest and smartest are always replicated. But they still aren't the best. After all, they've been running for God only knows how long. So I have well, in Sins of a Solar Empire 2, it seems like they're finally going to add a campaign, but it's still a coming soon situation. And they haven't been able to release, or they haven't been able to give us a date on when it's going to be released. So it makes me afraid that they're going to say that the mystery is too grand. They're not going to be able to actually, uh, explain it to anyone's satisfaction, which I would hate that kind of cop out. I have theories on what it is that's chasing them. After all, if you go into a system with a full fleet of ships, and they have a defensive battle station in the gravity well, plus all their like defensive measures that they have, you can actually wipe out the defenses in mere minutes. Now, in terms of actual gameplay, it would probably be like a few hours, maybe a few days before all the stuff is destroyed. But in a galactic scale, it's a very short period of time that you can wipe out the defenses of a home system. So it appears, in my personal opinion, that whatever is chasing Vasari has a few traits to its fleet. One, the fleet is stronger than a full-fledged fleet that you can make in the base game. Something that can wipe out what even a max-sized fleet with fully upgraded ships, with experienced crews in capital ships that have been through the ringer, who have been up-armored and upgraded to their fullest extent. In the base game of Sins of a Solar Empire 2, you can have a fleet supply of 1,500 supply, with a capital ship taking up 50 supply, and the Titan, the biggest warship imaginable, taking up 150 supply. Now, the smallest Titan has a crew of 3,000 individuals, which is pretty impressive. But the Vasari have ships that have tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people on board. Now, not everyone on board is an actual crew member. There are just ships that have the Vasari civilian population since they're always fleeing. But a giant kilometers long ship with 3,000 individuals. I mean, it is a very impressive ship, mind you. These are ginormous things. Now, if you were to compare them to the actual planet, they would probably be like, I don't know, half the length of a planet, which they're not that big. There's some exaggeration to the actual scale of things in the game. But anyways, on to the actual threat that's following the Vasari. It appears that their fleet is absolutely gigantic, that it has a phase jump inhibitor, but also has something that prevents communication from leaving whatever system that they're in, so that you can't call for backup or you can't get any information on what it is that's following Vasari. Not only that, it always strikes with overwhelming force, something that a fully upgraded fleet with max crews are not able to ever deal with. And you can't slow it down, it appears. And it seems to be hitting every single planet that the Vasari is visiting, either chasing them down, trying to end their existence for their past sins, or perhaps it is just simply expanding outwards, which means that the Vasari aren't the only one affected. It could be destroying every civilization it comes across. It also seems to have some kind of psychic powers, able to drive people mad and make them ineffective in holding them off, making sure that any survivors cannot come back to explain the threat that's chasing them. And it seems to be some overpowered civilization, perhaps one of the civilizations that made the phase jump inhibitor to begin with. A civilization coming back to claim what it believes is rightfully its, and its alone. Or it could be some uprising in the Vasari Empire. Some alien species that came across some technology, or invented something especially insane. Something similar to the Advent's unity, their psychic link to each other. Perhaps, maybe. It wouldn't be the Advent themselves. The Advent wouldn't have had time to go that far. But this is why in the game it's probably going to be necessary for the three factions to unify. The Vasari has the technology, it has the experience with whatever this threat is, whereas the Advent have the psychic link, the psychic powers to hold off whatever drives people mad by looking at this thing, to engage this thing, whereas the TEC Empire has the defensive capabilities to hold out as long as necessary in order to defeat this foe, to allow the stronger Vasari to go in with their, well, let's say that their, the Vasari use more phase missiles, missiles that go through phase space and destroy targets from within. Whereas the Advent used lasers, more energy weapons, and the TEC used more material, like mass drivers and rail guns and missiles and such as that. Torpedoes. It is an interesting idea that these three sinful empires, which, yes, that's why it's called that, these empires have committed sins in the past, and that they're trying to make up for their sins. But as time goes on, they continue to fight each other and try to destroy each other. They hate each other. And to be fair, they have been fighting for over 40 years at this point in the lore. It is an absolutely ludicrous amount of time. And the threat is already starting to wipe out TEC planets. Which means that the Vasari have been trying to keep ahead of this threat for a long time, and they are only ever a few decades ahead, which seems like a lot, but in this galactic scale, whatever is spreading out from their old civilization, oh my god, it does not rest. It does not hold back. It wants to take everything. So I really hope they actually make an actual campaign, and the campaign actually ends with like whatever this threat is to at least be revealed. If not wiped out, it needs to be revealed to us finally. Some kind of fourth civilization or some, I don't know, something like the Zerg or the Zelnaga or something like the bugs from Starship Troopers, or trying to think, the Tyranids from Warhammer 40k. Something like that. It has to be something that completely cuts off communications, like the Shadow and the Warp does for Warhammer. But I don't know. Yeah, no. Check out Sins of a Solar Empire and this sequel. The original still holds up to this day, and it still, with all the expansion packs, has a few more interesting features that are not in the sequel, which is kind of disappointing. I wish there were more diplomatic issues and a little bit more baubles on Sins of a Solar Empire 2, but they have 3 expansions planned. They do have a few new things that the old version, that the old game didn't, but they're still missing stuff from the uh, game as well. So hopefully they add in all of the old stuff and then start adding in more new stuff, and that would be nice. Anyways, check it out, and then later on, sometime this week, I'll talk about Distant Worlds 2, which also has a very interesting backstory and a lot more species, or at least a lot more factions you can play as. There seems to be multiple species within Sins of a Solar Empire, but the main ones are the Vasari and the humans. And the Advent are, well, they're human, but they're just humans with a psychic bond, so their culture is very much different. But they're still human, so. I wish there were more alien species, that like one of the ships you had would show that it's being run by an alien captain of some sort, but hey, it is what it is. Anyways, I'll get more to political videos later on, but I like to talk about some of my favorite fictional universes. And my god, I know I sound bored today, but I'm just trying to keep my voice down, and I am very relaxed today. I got a few things I still need to do today, so I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I hope you guys check out Sins of a Solar Empire. That's it for now. Bye.